Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Outcast. I am your host, Wolf, and I'm joined by.
Rush
HC.
and Rush 2112.
And if you haven't noticed by the thumbnail, we're here to cover once again with the Outcast RWBYathon RWBY Volume 4. So, I guess
So,
jumping right into it, general thoughts on the volume.
I'll say season 4 is probably my favorite one so far.
There's
Wait,
many
general
people in the fandom who I
thoughts.
think would disagree with you.
Yeah, okay, and that's something I want to say because when we started this retrospective, Wolf told me, "Listen, like most people think that after volume 3, this is going downhill, and like I'm watching this season, and it's like they, this is what people say has been downhill."
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
No, granted,
You
right?
know, which okay, and just because RWBY fans are probably watching this, like they are probably the first people to find this. No disrespect when it comes to that regard. You have your opinion, and that's cool. I just honestly think it was an interesting direction. Like I think that was a natural progress. Something. You know how uh, I haven't seen that movie, but you know how people kind of complain about The Last Jedi and how much it just changed from the Star Wars mythos, if you know what I mean. Like like it developed in ways that people didn't expect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not claiming anything, but I think that's what's happened here. Just as an observation of a new fan, I guess. Like a new from a new person coming in and seeing all of this for the first time, this did feel like a progression in a lot of ways, and maybe some people were just a bit taken off guard by this.
I think that's absolutely the case, right? I think for some people, it's just people are gonna hate. They want something to hate. They want something to hate. But for many, it was like a lot of people.
For once, your mic died there, Wolf.
Oh, why? Wait, what is this? Wolf's mic died. I think Rush. I think the RWBY fans are onto us. Quick!
He was about to
They
prove him
forgive.
wrong.
They forgave me because I'm new, but he won't make it. Quick!
Yeah.
Oh shit!
Man,
He's off the call.
this whole episode is
Oh,
just going
okay.
to shit.
He's back.
No,
He's back.
He's gonna
He's
probably
back.
have to restart Discord. We're waiting for him.
Wait, he's back on. He's back on the
Well,
call.
in the meantime, I will share my general thoughts. And
Yeah,
hopefully...
sure.
Nope, still not working, Wolf. Anyway, so my general thoughts. I enjoyed
Hello.
the season as well. Oh, there
I'm
you are.
back now.
Okay.
I hate. Yay! Terrible USB cords and USB mics. But anyways, go ahead, Rush. I'll let you finish up.
So I enjoyed the season. I actually really, I, I really kind of liked the way it went. Just because I like the darker, but not like so. There's just the levels. There's like a silly darkness, and then there's the serious darkness, and there's too serious, like gritty at that point. But this is like the still keeping it light while dark, and this volume has one of my favorite episodes, or two-parter, I guess. But so, yeah, there's my thoughts. Anyway, what you were saying about progression?
I've lost my train of thought at this point. Thanks,
So we were
Mike.
talking about how pretty much,
But
and I have my own thoughts as well on it. Basically, HC brought up how The Last Jedi kind of did not seem to progress as naturally as people would have liked, and in progression, that seems to be why they didn't like this one, which I disagree. It seems to progress, at least the idea of the whole volume seems like a natural progression, as opposed to how, there's a huge time jump, let's say, in not The Last Jedi, but The Force Awakens, and even then, in The Last Jedi, they're being chased in space. Like, what happened? That's just kind of doesn't seem to progress real well.
yeah, and it's for RWBY, right? I remember my train of thought now at this point. For RWBY, like a lot of people got into the show based solely on the fight scenes and who was animating them, right? Like Monty, and people love his fight scene choreography and animation, and that's what sold RWBY to them, and that's what they got into RWBY for. Volume 4, one of the biggest complaints you'll hear about Volume 4 and Volume 5 going forward is the fight scenes to many people aren't as good as they used to be. That's definitely going to depend on who you talk to. Some people who are way more eagle-eyed and way more technical and have a lot more knowledge and experience under their belt will definitely be able to critique it more than I would. And I'll definitely get into that in a little bit, but I think that's one thing that made people turn away from Volume 4 somewhat. Another thing I think is, like HC said, they went in a direction that was definitely different from the series normally. HC, you're making that noise again. I'm going to ask you to please stop whatever it is you're doing. I hate to do this during the show, but that noise is grating. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry because I have no idea what caused this.
I don't know either, and it's okay, happening again though.
Okay. Is it okay now?
For now, but we'll see.
So I may know what the problem is. I'll try and keep it. I'll try and control it. But
I'm sorry.
Anyway, it's okay. It's okay. I will say though, you mentioned technical stuff. The animation improved greatly in this season.
I agree. I think so as well. Like they did, like the switch over to Maya was really good for most everything, right? Like the look of the show is just way better, in my opinion. But yeah, like you said, like the show changed in a way I don't think many people liked or were expecting. But personally, I think the change for the show is really good, because for me, it gives me, like, I think Volume 4 focuses on, like, you guys know me, you've heard me talk about this many times, things I love in, for shows, movies, books, anything that I get into for entertainment media. I love world building. I love character development. Those are like my two big things. And I think Volume 4 really focuses in on stuff like that.
Also, there's a...
Yeah, because I think also in a lot of senses this was a change of format in a sense, because up until this point we were in the school. We were in the school all the time. We got out every once in a while, but we were just in the school. But now when the school is gone, we got this essentially a road trip show. This this reminded me more of Avatar: The Last Airbender in a lot of sense. In terms of how the story was told, what we were focusing on, and this was also a really personal season for a lot of for the core main characters. Like maybe tiny bit of a spoiler here: the main four don't interact with each other, at least face to face, throughout this entire season.
No.
But what I was gonna say is that I was gonna say the exact same thing. How, like, this season they're finally out of the school. It's like you'd wonder if they were, maybe if they had stayed at the school. You're doing it again, HC.
Yeah.
If they had stayed at the school, would it have gotten stale, or would it have been just I mean, they probably would have figured something out to do at the school, but how would you progress the plot past that? Because you're building up all these villains and such, but you can't do anything just staying at the school with all the villains and all the plot you're hinting at. This one, no, actually, ironically enough, as I say that, there wasn't much plot progression in this, because they're literally just traveling from one city to the next.
No, as far as the actual story goes, right? Like, the only thing we got is now our main character, RWBY, knows, and a few other characters know more about the kind of
Four maidens,
I guess you'd say, the evil head at the top. They know a bit more about her now. That's what they learned. That's our story progression.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I completely agree, but I do find it ironic that as they move forward, like in the season, you still get you get more hints of plot, but it's actually just it's even more setup. But that's good setup, because what we get in the next volume, which I know we're not going to do that yet, but the next volume definitely covers a lot of the stuff they set up. And as I said, I don't think they could have covered that in the school as well as they had covered it in the traveling show.
I do find it a little bit interesting that you say that, because I am someone who does feel that I think we should have spent more time in the school back in earlier volumes, right?
Yeah.
And I say that because I think it would have, because I say that because I think Volume 4 is a bit it spoils spoils its viewers and its fans a little bit, because it relies a lot on, those really, I think it relies a lot on great character interactions, and I think Volume 4 has quite a few enjoyable character interactions. I think Volume 5 going forward, you'll see even more of that, and I think it's like, I personally wish we would have gotten to see that back in volumes 1, 2, and 3 to a degree. Like, we didn't get as many of those really enjoyable character interactions in those volumes because they felt like they were moving so fast. They felt like it was just from action scene to action scene, waiting with maybe a breath here and there. This is the first volume where it's, here's your action scene. Okay, now it's just, let's breathe for a while. And I think that's something that RWBY as a whole has needed for a long time. I will say personally, I still don't feel it's enough. I feel like they could do with slowing down a bit more than what they have. But I do like that direction more. I do like the direction the show has taken more.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
yeah.
actually bring that up, and
We're-
just real quick, just real consensus. I think this that they really improved the character interactions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that also.
Okay.
That,
Yeah, that's something that I actually thought about, but I forgot to say. So, but anyway,
But I guess moving on, right? Unless you have anything else to say.
Actually, one thing I will say that's kind of non-spoilery. Like I think Nora and Ren, I didn't hate them or anything in the previous 3 seasons, but this season made me appreciate them a whole lot more.
This was definitely like kind of their season to a degree, I would say, especially as you get later on into the volume.
Yeah, but with that said, shall we do go episode by episode?
Sure. Episode 1, the next step.
Okay, I'll just, because I need to do something real quick that just popped up, so I'll just say quick thoughts on the episode. You guys go after this. So Tyrion is the one with the scorpion snake, right?
Yes, he's the scorpion tail. Yeah, the
Yeah.
fungus. Yeah.
Like, just tell me, did anyone else think of the Joker? Like, this guy wanted to be the Joker for some reason. It's like, well, DC won't give me that job, so I'll do my best here, because he was just such a ham, and I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Also, one quick thing I'll say about this episode: the fight scene with Tim. Is it called Ranyar now? With Ruby,
Ranger.
Nora.
Ranger
Yeah.
or Junior, take your pick.
Ranger sounds cool. So the fight between them and the giant was pretty cool, and yeah, it was a good first episode to get you kicked up, get you hyped up for the season. So with that said, I'll be right back. Hold on, you guys continue.
All right, Rush.
This one it was interesting just to see how they started after the end of last season. Because in fact, at the end of last season, Ruby wakes up in her home, and then you're like, okay, great, and then she leaves, and then you're like, okay, great, now what? And you wonder, is there going to be any time skip or not? And there's actually not too much of one.
There is. It's at least a couple months. I think Ruby's actually a year older at this point.
Really, I could have sworn that maybe they didn't.
It's not a year has passed, but a couple months have passed, and that's definitely a nitpick you can say with the show. They're not great at showing the passage of time.
See,
but
I thought that they were headed to what is it, Haven Academy?
No. Yes.
Yes, they are. It shouldn't have taken that long to get there. Should it have?
It's a fairly large continent.
Yeah, but you'd think.
And they're traveling mostly by foot, it seems.
And why? Anyway, okay, fair enough. I don't know. It just makes it seem like.
I mean, again,
since the whole volume. Sorry, not season. Since the whole volume of them doing this is them traveling, and they make it in, say, the volume, which that I believe they cover over like 2 months, maybe. I remember them saying.
Yeah, it's
3
definitely
weeks
time passes.
I remember at some point they say 3 weeks, but that's like earlier in the season. Volume. God, I need to remember I know nobody really cares, but um, so yes, it regardless of the time skip issue that I had, um, it at least doesn't go straight to them at Haven and then more story there. Like
Hmm.
at this point, we realize okay, they're going to be traveling at least some of the volume, even if it's for this one episode. Which after we finish, we realize no, it's not. And so it gave me the impression okay, we're going to get to see a lot more of just them by themselves, including the other characters who haven't even been shown yet.
I mean, just looking at the intro alone, right? Like, I love the intro for this one
Oh
because it really
yes.
gives you a good idea of like, okay, our characters are split up because you see their four main colors, and you immediately see those four main colors split up on a map of, what is Remnant, right? You see them like in different locations. I think that's a great way to show that, okay, so they're not going to be together for this volume. And then you see like all the different villains introduced. Like, I think, talking about the intro alone for this volume, I think it's one of the best ones they've done so far, not counting volume 5 yet, which we'll get to eventually. But what did you think about our introduction to Salem finally, our supposed main villain?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about our introduction to her?
I thought it was very interesting. We also get the whole League of Villains, right? Or is that
Yeah,
later?
pretty much.
Yeah, and that one's really interesting because you get, I mean, you get your Tolkien individual characters for the League, the the super massive fighter dude, uh, the really crazy creepy one, and then the guy who thinks he's better than everybody else. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I guess Cinder is technically the girl who thinks she's better than everybody else. But anyway, uh, you know, we get that introduction, and then like she basically stops them with like she's like just stop your fighting, and they all listen to her. So that's when you realize okay, she's got something going on that we really don't know what's up. But
I think the show does a really good job of selling her to you, right?
mm-hmm,
Like, as of now, you've seen nothing that gives off this idea of a threat for her. But I think the music for the scene, like, I love the music for this scene, right? The music for this scene is something that to me stands out as really nailing that kind of this character is supposed to be creepy and a little bit off kilter, off base, just off with you. You're not supposed to really get her, understand her as of right yet, and it definitely sells that creepiness factor. The music for this, and I think is great. So like, but I think they really nail her for this scene. Like, I think they nailed the character they want to nail for this scene for Salem, at least, anyways. Um, Talking about it, y- you know, like getting, we also get a new look at the Grimm as well, and so we see like apparently the Grimm are born from black pools of
mm-hmm.
something or other. Again, learning more about the Grimm. Again, this goes back to that we're getting a bit more about the world, and it's building up that world, and this is enjoyable to see. Also, we find out that apparently Cinder was badly hurt by Ruby somehow. No clue how.
Well, we know that the Silver Eyes like the Cinder disappeared after that. We don't know how bad the damage
Yeah,
was.
we have no clue what happened to Cinder. We just know that Ruby's silver eyes kicked in,
Mm-hmm.
and saved the day, kind of, sort of. But yeah, overall, like, I think this was, as HC said, this was a really good. We get a nice fight scene, a fairly good fight scene to kind of kick things off, going into a look at our villains and kind of what they're doing and planning, and how they're specifically targeting Ruby now, and how we get a small tidbit of how they've dealt with a person with silver eyes in the past, probably alluding to Ruby's mother, maybe not. But again, a nice overall like kind of building of a few characters and building of a little bit of the world, and just a nice fight scene to kind of ease us back into a new volume. I think overall this was a good first episode. But I guess with that said, since HC isn't back yet, I guess we'll just move on to episode 2, Remembrance. Your thoughts?
HC, you there?
I guess not.
Guess not.
I guess your
Anyway,
turn, Rush.
Yeah. He did mute himself, and I thought it may have been a issue with the
Yeah.
server, so I unmuted him just to see if he's there. But he'll get back when he gets back. I know I've left before. Anyway, remembrance.
Professional. That's our
Yes.
podcast to a T, remember.
Yeah. Well, hey, if I have to go somewhere, I have to mute this and the recording. Otherwise, you get
Yeah.
to hear me talking to whoever is coming into my room for whatever reason. Anyway, remembrance. This is the introduction. So for the longest time, we've heard about Weiss's dad. You know,
Hmm.
uh, and then we finally get his character, and my God, he is a character. They do a really good job of making him an awful person.
They do.
And
I think he's probably one of the few characters that everybody hates, and they hate him because he's an awful person. They
mm-hmm,
don't hate him because he's a bad character, or they dislike him for
yeah,
some other reason,
uh,
which is rare for this show at times.
yeah, and then man, oh man, that was bravo. Although let's be honest, it's not hard to write. Sadly, it's not hard to write an abusive father. Anyway,
No.
let's not go down that path. Hopefully, HC doesn't bring that up when he comes back. So then we get to Team Ranger finding the
Mhm.
destroyed village. We actually find out that they find another huntsman, which I find is actually really that's like a really nice thing to think about because they're dead now. No, I realized that sounded bad. That's why I said that. I think it's a really nice thing that they found a huntsman there because it reminds you that it's not just Haven Academy or Beacon that have the huntsmen. Huntsmen, once they have been trained and graduated, are out everywhere. And you kind of
Mhm.
get this idea. It's like, oh, I completely forgot about that. At least for me, it's like it's nice to see them that they're somewhere else.
But it's also nice, right? Because you get to see that the Grim are a threat, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just the Grim that are a major threat too, but it is, the Grim definitely had a hand in bringing down the village, although it was mostly due to bandits, but which is a nice thing to see as well that there are people in this that building the once again building the world up that there are apparently roaming clans of bandits that will attack outlying villages
Mm-hmm.
because we needed a quote unquote Dothraki. I mean, that's what I'm going to assume it's in reference to. But I mean, it
Fair
kind of
enough.
does work that way, right? Like they're a roaming band of people who continually stay on the move and they just steal from other people in order to survive. And the only reason they stay on the move is so the Grim don't come after them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because, and I think it's interesting for here as well because one, it shows that there's more threats out there than just the Grim, but also it does show that once again, even though we don't see it in the show quite often, that the Grim are there. They are a threat to people, right? They are something that they have to deal with. That is a bother. That's more than just a bother. That they're deadly. They're dangerous. The show, I don't feel, shows us that quite often. It feels like the Grim are just
Right.
kind of there as a minor annoyance more often than they're not.
It's also
So,
because a lot of the time they're fighting the huntsmen who are like obviously not normal humans who suffer the consequences. Clearly,
mhm.
unless you're disintegrated by a super being or have your arm cut off by another super being. But
This is true.
she's all right. She walked it off because she couldn't
She did.
handstand it off. But you know that you're completely right. You finally get to see, other than when they in season or volume 2 when they were in like the Forgotten City, but that was more like a relic. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so whatever, I guess. But then you see, oh wow, okay then. Ooh, never mind.
I mean, it's nice to see the history of the world, but this is very much recent. You can tell that, okay, this is a thing that happened recently. This is still a problem for them. This
Mm-hmm.
is still something they have to deal with on a daily basis, right? It's
Yeah.
nice to see that. And I think it's good that the show remembers that and is paying some attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess going back to Weiss for a minute, I love how they kind of just go through the different shots of the house, and you can just see how empty the house feels, the mansion feels, I guess you would say, not a house.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. Again, it shows just how disconnected Weiss is from her father, and just how kind of torn apart her family is.
Yes.
Other things that I would point out, I think, looking at, I think, going back to the huntsman scene when Jean and Ruby find the huntsman and he's kind of there, I think that's a great scene for Jean and Ruby, because you get to immediately hear like how Pyrrha's death affected both of them, right? Especially Jean, and how they immediately, like, they're into, all right, we need to save this guy, we need to do everything we can, and they're kind of talking about it, but they're not actually helping him. They're doing nothing to actually actively help him and try to keep him alive.
Yeah.
They're just kind of standing there talking around him. I think it shows that they want to do more. They want to be active. They want to keep people from dying, but they still just have no clue as to what to do. I think that's
I'm
a
back,
nice
by the way.
moment for the character. Hello, welcome back.
We noticed.
Are we in episode 2?
Yes,
We're in episode
2,
7.
Remembrance.
Awesome. Okay, so I just want to say I'm sorry about this, but some neighbors could really be annoying, even though you tell them you don't have the time to talk. So fuck neighbors. That's the moral of this story. Anyway, I will say you guys talked about Weiss's part already.
No, go ahead. You can go back to it if you want.
I'll just say that one, I did like Weiss's plot in the entire season. That's one. 2, I love the design of the house. 3, I love how asshole her father is. And 4, am I the only one who suspected her brother? Like, her brother was like too on the nose. Like, as someone like, I don't like you. You're a bad guy.
I mean, watching it now, yeah, sure. When I first watched it, I thought her brother was actually going to be a little bit better than that, but looking at it now, yeah, like he wasn't going to be outright as that much of an asshole, but or at least I should say I hoped it would. Like, maybe there's some semblance of something good within the family other than Weiss, but it would seem that it seems like Winter and Weiss are the only two who kind of got out and are halfway decent.
It's basically that. I think this is a direct, this is kind of like a direct shot at the patriarchy style of families, where it's like the guys, the men of the family are like just assholes.
Yeah, pretty
possibly.
much. Just a reminder, is this the episode where we see Jean practicing with Priya's video, or am I confusing it with something else?
No, I think that's enough. Let me see.
Yeah, let's just tear our hearts out now anyway.
Yes, this is that episode.
Okay, because I remember watching this and I'm like, that's I thought it was a cool thing for her to do, to help him get better at fighting and stuff. But at the one hand I like it, but at the other hand, I don't know, something kind of irked me about it. I can't point my finger on what exactly. That was something.
How dare you? That made me sad.
It's interesting. I think the thing that irks a lot of people about Jean and Pyrrha is, especially Pyrrha's death, is how it's supposed to affect Ruby, and how to them it doesn't, and to how them it doesn't make a lot of sense, because Ruby and Pyrrha never had any interaction within the show. And I get where they're coming from. And a lot of people, one big criticism you'll hear of Volume 4, one of the big criticisms from people who dislike it, is that Ruby's a very static character in Volume 4, right? And personally, I think that's fine, because I don't think Ruby needs to grow in that moment just yet. I think Ruby's growth personally, right? Like, Volume 3 was very much about tearing down these characters. You see Yang in Volume 4 now suffering with PTSD and dealing with basically losing an arm, and not just her arm, but losing her sense of self as well. You see Jean having his idealized version of what a hunter should be kind of destroyed when he sees these people who are supposedly training to be hunters and huntresses themselves just outright destroy people's lives and kill innocent people. That's being worse than the monsters he's been against, that he's fought so far. These people were worse than the monsters he's fought already. That kind of, again, it destroys that idealized version he has. And RWBY as well has that same very similar idealized version of what a hunter should be. They're the heroes. You hear this very volume, skipping ahead a bit, you have Jean question Crow, be outright, kind of short with Crow, kind of mean to Crow. It's like, hey, I dislike you. I dislike this hiding thing. I dislike everything you've kind of said and set up. And I'm against all of this, but I'm going with it because I want to get back at the person who killed Pure, right? Like, he's definitely kind of walking that path of maybe revenge, but he's still not quite sure what he wants, it seems like, right? And it's very much, he's definitely in that phase of, I'm questioning a lot of stuff. I'm questioning what it is I want to do and where it is I want to be and what it is that means now. RWBY isn't doing that as of right now. Maybe you could argue she's not because she's so focused on her goal, but I feel that it's less that, and I feel she very much wants to blind herself to that. She very much wants to blind herself to Crow's shortcomings, to other hunters and huntsmen's, to other hunters' shortcomings as well, because she wants to see them all as the heroes she believes they are, right? So I think her static growth,
Very, like, and it kind of fits, like, isn't she supposed to be like the youngest of the crew in a sense? So
she's
it also
a year or two younger than everyone.
Yeah, so it does fit that she still has this kind of naive point of view on the world.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's very interesting.
There was also, you said about how RWBY was static. I think that's completely fine for this being her first major trauma. So
I agree.
She's coping. That's all I'm going to say.
Again, I think it's like she's very much like she's blinded herself to a lot of it, right? Like, she's trying to turn on those blinders and blind herself to the fact that her idealized version of the world and of huntsmen and huntresses isn't necessarily what she wants it to be. And I think eventually, that's going to come to the fore, and she's going to have to question all that. And it's going to be interesting to see how she handles that and what she does to the characters who force her to confront that finally, right? Again, interesting things to point out and talk about, I suppose. But I guess if that's all for episode 2, moving on, episode 3 of Runaways and Stowaways.
Yay, Blake.
So
and this was most of the episode, just her and Sun on the ship, Sun wanting to have her take down the White Fang, but Blake just wants to go home, see the family and stuff. And
she wants to go to a place she feels safe at.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, giant worm attacks, and we have a fight scene, which is cool.
This is the fight scene where, like, I told you before, right, that a lot of people dislike the fight scenes in Volume 4. And I've seen a lot of the critique for this, and this is the fight scene where I felt like, yeah, they might have some merit here, because this fight scene between Blake's son and the water dragon Grim, whose name I think is the Sea Feilong. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. But the fight here, to me, felt off when I first watched it. When I first watched this fight, the first thing that came to my mind was, these characters almost feel like they're flying, that they're jumping so high in one
bound.
Yeah,
at some point it did feel like they're jumping way too high from what's been established. And I'm pretty sure the school didn't give them that.
No. So it's definitely like, even for you.
Today, right, kids, you want how to jump and act like you're flying. Cool.
So definitely the sense of gravity felt off with this fight. It's still a fun fight to watch, but definitely at the very least, right, I think the sense of gravity, there was a lack of it here. They definitely felt like they skewed that somewhat compared to past instances in the show. But I think, looking at Volume 4 and talking about the fight scenes really quick and small thing. Things do get better in Volume 4 as time goes on, right? Like I think looking at the Crow versus Tyrion fight and the Knuckle fight with that final Grim, those are really good fights, I think.
Also, another thing about this episode, we see Yang getting the prosthetic arm, and this was again, I did like this because it was, you could see that she's not entirely ready to just let the thing go and move on. She reacts very realistically to it, and I like that.
I mean, you can see, like, they even show she's suffering from PTSD somewhat of losing her arm and, like, losing to Adam.
Well,
because, again,
honestly, who wouldn't suffer PTSD from this?
Well, again, like, like I said before, I think Yang's, she's suffering from trauma, not just because of losing her arm, but also because, her entire sense of self was somewhat destroyed when she was just beaten in one blow like that. This is a character who's been able to take a lot of hits and just dish that out twice as hard. And you even have her own father tell her this, right? And it's interesting to see her have to deal with that,
In a sense, I compare this to this season to like something like Avatar: The Last Airbender. This really reminded me of the final season of Legend of Korra, if you know what I'm talking about.
I do. This is really good for that, I think. It's definitely, I think, as of now, I think Korra does a little bit better because because Korra spends more time focusing on it. I don't think RWBY spends as much time focusing on it as it could have,
Well, you can also kind of tell, because all intents and purposes, Yang is one of the few main characters, but she's not the main character as Korra is in her own show.
This is true. And so, you definitely have to keep stuff like that in mind. Forgot what I was going to say. Oh, well. Rush, your thoughts. Cover it up, quick.
So, this episode... this episode, I agree with we're finally... Ironically enough, Blake is the last one that we see of the four in the whole, of the four in main characters in this volume, she's the last one that we see. And we get this, even though she was pretty much the first one to leave at the end of last season. So we finally figure out what happened to her. And I think it was from a storytelling standpoint, I think it was a good idea that they made Sun stow away with her. Mainly for the fact of his support of her, and in later the other volume as well. Because she really doubts herself a lot. And even though as Yang told her at the dance, like, she basically would help her, like, now Yang can't because Yang lost an arm, and honestly Blake blames herself for that. So having somebody else, having a support system that's not her mom or her dad, pretty much just saying everything's gonna be okay, right, is a really good idea from the storytelling perspective. That's all I got.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Blake's story is, you can see, like, her trying to run away from her issues and run away from her problems to what she feels like protect everyone else is very much, kind of the story she's dealing with and the major problem she has to get over for herself and deal with for this volume, as well as maybe a little bit of the next, right? And it's interesting and nice to see them go through that. I love Sun's nonchalance here, though. Sun is always a lot of fun to see on screen, and I love his nonchalance with just everything that he's dealing with. It's always fun. Generally, even though, I may not have liked the fight scene in its entirety, it's still a lot of fun to watch. But I guess, moving on. Episode 4, Family.
Okay, I'll just say, even the one part that I just didn't really get yet, maybe the next volume will talk about this more, But what was the thing with Aspen being like the conscious for this kid?
Do what now? Oh, you'll learn in time.
Okay, so it's something that is going somewhere because
Yes.
okay, okay, legit.
You'll learn in
So
time.
I'll learn
There
in
is a
time.
reason.
Okay. Mhm. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So this is the episode where Crow meets Raven. Like,
Yes.
and we see Raven for the first time. Now, I don't do conversation one to one because it's been a bit of a while since I saw the season, and sadly I don't have the time to rewatch some stuff before we record, as much as I would love to. But I do remember like in the session between them, they had this sibling banter between them, but at the same time, you can tell that one clearly doesn't agree with the other. You can tell there's tension. So managing to balance this out was nice.
I agree. I absolutely agree. It's definitely nice to see like these two characters interacting with one another, considering they are twins after all, and it's very interesting to kind of see that interaction. And you can tell like they're still family. They still kind of care for one another, but you can also see there's a lot of tension there as well. I think they nailed that fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
I think also it's nice to see Oobleck and Port again.
Yeah.
Oobleck's still great. Still love Oobleck. Best teacher. Would love to have him teach me.
Mm-hmm.
It would be
Oh,
so much fun.
definitely.
But it was also again, just this. I think this one was very much a lot of nice. This was very much Yang's episode. I feel like this was a good Yang episode, and it really focused in on her and getting to see her still dealing with more of that PTSD and that trauma, and even having going to the point of having showing one of her nightmares of Adam and all of that, and just how that it's all affected her, and then kind of hearing her talk with her dad a little bit, and how her dad's very much probably not great at dealing with emotional trauma himself either.
Mm-hmm.
Considering he's very forceful about how he acts.
Actually, exactly, but there was a line in that conversation with Port Oblak and Yang in the kitchen where he says something like, "Oh, douchebag!" Like you don't say stuff like that. But then Yang is like, "Oh, you're always joking like that." And, oh, okay, so it was a joke. Okay, like I was about to say worst parent of the year right there. But
I mean, I think like it's supposed to come off as a joke, but I think it's also supposed to come off as like that's how he thinks and sees things somewhat. Like he does mean it a little bit. Like he's meant it. Like it's meant to kind of bring her out of her shell somewhat, or try to, anyways. Right? That's his attempt at. Again, I think showing off that he's probably not the best of parents himself either. Better than Yang's mom, sure, considering he stuck around, but still
well,
maybe not the
yeah,
best of parents.
well, comparing a parent in this show to Raven is kind of, what kind of a comparison is because Raven is
Hey,
kind of
she's a better
villainous
parent
as of now.
than Weiss's dad, though. It's like we have a list of
Eh,
bad parents. Hey, she doesn't attack her kid.
Raven's never
Okay.
attacked her kid.
okay, point made. But still, that credit.
I know. It's a loose comparison at best, but
Yeah, understandable.
anyway.
But yeah, this is definitely just a Yang episode, and I think the interactions here for the characters are good, very enjoyable to see and everything.
So
But
next one.
any other thoughts?
Nope.
Okay, episode 5, Menagerie.
It's nice to meet Blake's parents right now, and I do like Sun's interaction with her father. Like
That is so funny. I always like the disapproving father stereotype. I always find that funny. If
yeah,
the character
but
acts
in
like
this
Sun
one,
does.
but usually with this kind of trope, it's kind of like you can just tell from either body language or something that the father doesn't really like the guy the girl brings home. But in this one, it was just like there were no hints, or he didn't talk to anyone. He didn't talk to anyone about it. Just outright tells son, "I hate you.
Yeah,
I don't like like you know." So that's funny. That was great.
The thing that stuck out to me when I first saw this episode, when Volume 4 was first releasing, they animated the ears, and I immediately went, "Oh gosh, so cute!" It was adorable. I can't help it. That got me. Seeing the ears animated. They've done it in the past before. Like if you go back and watch volumes 1, 2, and 3, I never knew this. I had someone point it out to me. The bow is actually animated, and you can see it wiggle from time to time. But so that was a neat little side thing that I can note that was told to me much later on that I never noticed. But seeing the ears get animated here is just adorable. So cute.
This is another thing we learned here, that apparently Blake's parents have some sort of connection to the White Fang.
Yes, it's not much of a spoiler to say that Gira was once the leader of the White Fang.
Mm-hmm.
Then he stepped down to become chief of menagerie.
Mm-hmm.
So one might say that's an improvement from going to leading a, when he was leader of it, it was a non-violent organization, to leader of an entire city. So one might say he improved quite a lot. But yeah, it's I love Blake's parents. I think they're great. Kalia's best mom, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, like, again, seeing all the interactions between Blake and her parents and son and, Blake's parents as well is just a lot of fun. Seeing Blake's mom kind of lean over and just tell Blake, I like him. He's cute. And Blake immediately go, Mom.
Yeah.
It's just a nice moment.
I also I like the
it is because Blake was always kind of like the quiet, the quiet, not really saying anything unless I have to type of person. So to put her in a situation where she brings a boy home and it's not, and at least as of now, you guys
a
tell
murderous psychopath.
Yeah, you bring another boy home and he's not necessarily her boyfriend. Even if he was, these reactions make sense. Like, it's funny seeing her specifically in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Something else I'd point out, right? Like, I love how they kind of give you a bit of the history of Menagerie and how they tell you, like, Menagerie looks like a beautiful and great place, but at the same time, when you actually start hearing a bit more about it, how it's very overcrowded, it's very small compared to what they actually need, and how the island was given to them, right? Like, you kind of hear, okay, well, wow, Menagerie, really not that great of a place as it looks, actually. Kind of deceiving. It's nice that they actually took the time to focus in on that a little bit, because it might not have been something that we would have gotten otherwise, right? So it's a nice little thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also really love Sun's reaction to asking which house is Blake's, and she points it out to him, and he's like, "Oh,
yeah."
No, so he said, "Wow, this place is huge. Can you see your house from here?" He says, "Yeah, it's right there," and she points to the massive one. I was actually going to say that.
Yeah. That was a funny moment as well.
And Sun thought it was just a little house off to the side or something, pointed it out, and he's immediately like, "Oh, yay!" That was great.
So a fun episode overall.
Oh, absolutely. And we get to see a little bit more of the White Fang and how they actually have a fairly big influence on Menagerie, and still yet. And it's also interesting to see how, like, you find out a little bit that Menagerie doesn't get news as quickly as other kingdoms might. And again, kind of just, that subtle hint that, the Faunus are still kind of not viewed the same way as humans are, right? That there's still that racism going on, so they don't have news as quickly as other kingdoms might, because they don't have their own CCT tower. So, just nice, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess moving on to
episode 6,
Tipping Point.
Okay. And I'll say that I already mentioned before that I like what they did with Weiss in this season, and this episode is kind of because when the series started, Weiss was in a sense the preachy person. She thought she was kind of above everyone. And here you can really see the development of her character. That once she comes back and she sees all these other higher class people, she's just enraged by them. They annoy her now.
Well, you can see that her team affected her, right? Like they got to her,
Yeah.
they made her change. It's nice to see that.
Again, character development.
Absolutely, and it's also nice to see, right? Like even though she acts like the one who has it all together and the one who knows everything, and she's above a lot of all of it, that
and we see that
it's all a facade, right? Like her family definitely does not have it all together, and they're definitely not above it all, and they're definitely pretty terrible at times. Like it's definitely not a great life. So it's nice to see like that act is very much that. It's an act she puts on to hide everything else and to just get away from it all. It's nice to see that. And I think it's also nice, like they've talked about how Weiss can sing in the past, and finally you get to see her sing.
Yeah.
And hear her sing, I guess you'd say as well. A nice little thing. And this is the episode as well where we learn a bit about Ren and his past, a little bit about him and Nora's past, but not a lot. We get more of that later, so we can delve into that a little bit later on.
Yeah, there was an episode about that later on. So
before we get to the big moment, though, another small moment that I love is Ironwood going to a ball, a gala, still strapped as well, always carrying that gun because he has to pull it out at the moments to be a badass.
Man.
You can never be, you can never be too careful.
Dude, I said that freaking hand cannon.
It's great.
Yeah, like
going to a gala strapped. Yeah. She's the one here making any sense to me. Walks off like, damn, Ironwood.
Dude, yeah, he just keeps becoming. I just keep liking him more and more. Like when he first showed up, I'm like, this guy is kind of, he seems a little too paranoid for me to like him. But then he just goes off when everything actually does go to shit. And then
it's great.
And then this, and he's just like, also he's rocking a nice beard too. Some good stubble going on.
You could see like Ironwood, like that paranoia is getting to him somewhat. Like you can see he's getting a bit more paranoid, and it's definitely making him do things he probably wouldn't otherwise do. But at the same time, like it's still nice to see like the badass still shines through. There's my badass. That paranoia might get you in the end, but as long as you go out being a badass all the way through, I'm okay with that. But I guess getting to the big moment, Tyrion.
Tyrion catches up with Team Ranger, and a fight commences.
And this is where we get to see him fight Team Ranger, and you can really see like the difference in skill and ability here. How they are still hunters and huntresses in training, and this is a guy who's had years of experience on him, and he's probably been through many fights, and you can tell it because he absolutely wipes the floor with them.
No doubt.
But something that I noticed that I liked how they did here, and this is one of those fights that I think they actually did really well with for the most part, right? Like I don't think nothing feels off to me from this fight personally. Maybe you could argue like certain aspects.
I will say though,
but
one thing I do want to point out. It's kind of segueing to the next episode, but I'll just say it that this episode kind of ends on a cliffhanger with this fight, and we don't see the resolution until the end of the next episode.
Sure.
So
the big thing is Crow coming in to save the day, and him, and eventually going into next episode, our fight with Crow and Tyrion. I will say, quick aside, I love how the show's starting to handle aura now, and you can and they're physically showing when someone's aura has been depleted, right? Like someone's aura is broken to the point where now they can be actually hurt and actually killed.
Yeah, because I remember who asked us about the aura, and I'm like, I actually have no idea what you're really talking about, but now I'm starting to get it.
Yeah, you can
I'm
actually
not.
they physically starting to show that now. I think that's a good thing, right?
Mhm.
Because it shows you as the audience like, okay, that's why these characters are taking all these hits, because they were protected by that. Now that they're not, now they can physically get hurt. You know, it's nice to see that, I think. But I guess,
Yes.
getting right on into the Crow versus Tyrion fight, episode 7, Punished.
Yeah. Okay. So,
But yeah, a few small things. Like, we see Oscar still going with Osmond, kind of struggling about what he wants to do with that, and kind of them having their back and forth, which is really nice and interesting. And then we see, Whitley showing his true colors finally, and him being, the miniature Jacques that he is. And then, we see Weiss's, just being determined, like, okay, then fine, if you're going to lock me in here, I'm going to make the most of it, right?
yeah.
And we kind of see, like, Jacques just absolutely taking everything away from Weiss, and just, and how that affects Weiss and all that. Like, yeah, nice stuff there. Anything else you want to add on small stuff like that?
In terms of the small stuff, I think, yeah, because the main, like I said, the main thing in this episode is the continuation of the fight
Yeah, the
with
main draw
Tyrion.
is Crow versus Tyrion. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, which ends with Crow getting poisoned, and then Ruby just cuts off Tyrion's tail. Like,
Yep.
jeez.
And Tyrion just immediately yells out, "Bitch!"
Mm.
Like, man, that
Yeah.
hurt. Why'd you do that?
That's also one of the things where, like, I mean, I know they say, like, oh, they're both getting close to running out of ore and stuff like that, but it just makes you wonder, where is the disconnect? Because, like,
What do you
she
mean?
uses her, so she has the scythe right on his thing, and then uses the sniper bullet as extra power to pull it up, like to cut it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what prevents her from doing that earlier? I know, obviously, it's not stuck, but Crow, who's arguably stronger, like, he gets stopped cold by that thing, even when it's low on aura. It's like, yeah, it just, that's one thing that's always bothered me. It's like,
Yeah, it's definitely like there's
no
definitely
clear
some
line.
disconnect here and there. I agree. They're definitely not as consistent as they possibly could be. I think sometimes they do kind of like, this is a moment we want to have. Let's use this for that moment and kind of sell it, right? You could argue that the stinger is stronger than the other part of the tail that Ruby hit, but
I guess that's right. That's not what I was thinking about, but
probably
yeah.
being a little bit pedantic. And I mean, again, like I would say, probably being a little bit nitpicky as well with the original complaint. But again, I do get where you're coming from. The show could stand to be a bit more consistent, and I do think it's something that they are improving in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think overall, this was about this fight in general was just about selling the coolness and badassery of Crow finally, and getting to see him fight.
Yeah.
I think one of the great moments is when the music finally kicks in and you just see Crow just walk up and punch Tyrion right in the face. That's probably the moment that sells this fight for many people, I think. And sells Crow for many people. Just seeing him just walk straight up and like, well, just take a hit to the face because you got my weapon out of my hand. Yeah. And then seeing Crow kind of throw his sword and just stand back on the sword and slide back on it, and when he's standing up, kind of staring down Tyrion, and that's when you see his aura finally deplete and go away. It's like those are moments that sell this fight and sell this character to people, and I think that's what this was really about, was selling this character and just what the difference in skill and level and experience is between Team Ruby and Team Ranger and Crow and Tyrion, and just seeing like the difference in level here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, a lot of good stuff here. And I would say, I guess with all that said, going right on to episode 8, A Much Needed Talk, is still kind of a continuation of this.
Yeah, because and the name fits. It does give them like a bit of a talk about how it does explain to them how some things work, like the entire thing, the entire thing with the huntsman and You know, you could argue this is as some sort of way to give exposition, but it does work because we learn this with the characters. So it's not like he tells them, as you know, and then goes ahead to do this entire plot dump. No,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm pretty much done.
Like, you know, you're talking about like the story of the two brothers and the relics and all of that. I love the animation change here, right? I love when shows do this, when they decide, hey, let's do like an explanation thing, but let's show this to you as well, and let's just not have it be a character on screen talking, but let's do a neat different style of animation we've not done for our show before. Let's do this. And it's very much like, let's play off of the light and shadow of the fire, and that's how we're going to show all of this. I think that's a really creative idea, and I think it sells it fairly well. And helps that, you know, we're definitely just getting kind of expositioned at for a little bit, but it's fun to watch, right?
Yeah. And then we see that, Crow did get hurt by a Tyrion stinger, and he's now, he now has a poison inside of him. And is this the episode where they decide what to do, if they should split, or is it too?
That's next
episode. Or is it? Oh, okay. So I'll talk about it then, but then that's another.
Yeah, that's either next episode or the episode after that. But something, I love the moment between Blake and Kira. Right, like that's such a sad but nice moment. Like, seeing how Blake, basically comes to Kira and it's like, you guys should be mad at me. You should be upset with me. And he's like, no, it's fine. We understand it. We get it. I think it's just a nice moment between those characters, and seeing, just how affected Blake was with Adam and kind of everything that he did, and just how that hit her, and how she basically thought her parents were cowards and stuff like that, and how she's finally able to come back to them and tell them, I was wrong, you were right. And it's just a really nice moment to see. Something, again, coming back to, like I said before, right, I talked about how Jean, in this moment especially, like, he really questions Crow. He gets upset with Crow, and he doesn't like the explanations and a lot of stuff that Crow gives to them. And I think, again, it shows how, like, Pierre's death really affected Jean, and how Jean's seeing that this idealized world that he, of how he thinks things should be and should exist and should act, isn't the way he wants it to be, and it bothers him, and it's making him question a lot of stuff, and he doesn't like that. And I think it's nice to see that, and you can see, and I like the contrast between him to Ruby, who is, again, I say, in my opinion, is very much kind of putting on the blinders to blind herself to a lot of those questions, so she doesn't have to focus on them. Her focus is on, why won't you let me fight with you, Crow? Why wouldn't you let me help you? That's what I want to do. Why? And he tells her, I love hearing about Crow's semblance, which is very much a unique semblance, in the fact that his semblance is literally just, I bring bad luck to people. That's my semblance. It's like, okay, that's unique.
Yeah. And you can kind of see it.
Oh yeah, they definitely kind of show it a little bit in the previous fight, where you see, Crow look for the weak points in the roof and kind of run over to that, and Tyrion just falls into it, or you see the beams overhead fall, and we're going to hit Ruby, and Crow had to protect her, right? Like, it's interesting to see stuff like that. I think they show his semblance fairly well before they actively explain it all to you.
Yep.
But I think that does it all for a much needed talk. So I guess moving on.
Yep.
2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
We should say, Rush, you've not talked in a little while. Do you have anything to say?
I do think we've completely glazed over the fact that, or the story of Oscar.
We have. Mostly, in my opinion, a lot of his stuff isn't major until Volume 5. But if you have anything to say on it.
I was just going to say that, we ended last season thinking Osmond was dead, and it turns out he's not.
This is true.
And so,
and like, we should say, like, even Salem, very much early on in episode 2 asks Cinder, like, are you sure you killed him? And apparently, like, it's very much important to Salem that Osmond is dead. All right, so it's interesting to see. Again, I think it's Oscar and Osmond's story is definitely going to have more focus in Volume 5, a little bit more focus, anyways. We're definitely going to get more from that. There's not a lot other than just questions, and it's hard to, like, if we were watching the show as it was airing right now and I didn't already know, I could ask those questions and bring up ideas and theories and thoughts, but I already know the answer to a lot of those, so it's hard to say anything without spoiling HC, and I don't want to spoil HC. So
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
But yeah, and so we sort of just get to see how we don't get the pure explanation yet. Oh man, I'm tired. Sorry, I didn't have my coffee this morning. We don't get the full explanation yet. And then, but we do get one. I think it was actually, it may have been in this one, but it was when he meets the who's the really big guy from the
Hazel,
yeah, and like there's just a really tense moment where, like, it's Oscar by himself. Osmond doesn't even talk, and we obviously find out later what's going on, but
you
like
skipped ahead a little bit.
You're like,
but I get what you're talking about.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was this episode or not.
No, it's a little bit up ahead, but yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. I agree.
Anyway, but now we can move on.
But yeah.
So,
two steps forward, 2 steps back.
What can I say? I love how both Weiss and Yang are have kind of finished their training in a sense, and they're ready to move on. And then we have Blake discovering that she was her friend. Is now a White Fang member.
Ilya's always been with the White Fang, from my understanding, but she's surprised by the fact that it's Ilya there who they're dealing with. She knows Ilya, essentially. You'll learn more about that one in Volume 5.
Yep.
Well, so we'll talk about
your thoughts on that one.
Okay, so we'll talk more about that then. And but then we get to the end where, Team Ranger, taking Crow with them, trying to look for someone to help them, and then they come to Pax. And this, I think, was a really interesting, interesting thing for Ruby herself, because in a sense that she was the leader of Team Ruby, and in a sense you could argue that she's the leader of this team. So it was an interesting to see her actually trying to reach a decision on what to do, which is for the best of the team, and actually having them split up. And it's not a big thing, but I enjoy that.
I mean, yeah, it's worth mentioning, right? Like, they shouldn't have had to have split up. The reason they did split up is very much personal to Ren and Nora, especially Ren, right? Like, Ren's the reason why they split up, because he simply did not want to go to or through Kuroyuri, right? Like, he didn't want to go back to that town, and you do learn why very soon after this in the next episode. But it's interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a lead up for the next episode, which we'll get to in a sec.
And we do see Sun getting hurt here, and Blake once again feeling responsible for Sun getting hurt. It's another one of her friends who gets hurt, thanks to what she feels like is her fault. And that's another just kind of reinforcing that, and once again, like, also reinforcing that the place she came back to isn't as safe as she thought it was, right? Again, showing her and the audience that running away isn't going to solve her issue. It's not going to solve her problems. She's still not going to be safe. Something I will say, like, it's talking about Yang training with Tai, her dad. I love this. It's some great character moment back and forth between the two of them. It's really fun to watch and see. But talking about the fight specifically, this is a good moment where I can say, like, this is something I've seen people critique some of the fight scene shots, like where they'll have the camera placement at during fights within volume 4 and 5, and how sometimes they make some bad shot selection. A lot of people complain at not getting to see the full fight when the fight scene zooms in on an image of Zwei, and we kind of see just Zwei, swaying his head back and forth, watching Yang and Tai fight, but we don't get to actually see the fight. This isn't, again, it's not something I have a ton of experience and knowledge with to be able to critique very well myself, but I can see where people are coming from when saying, like, that should have been a fight we got to see. We shouldn't have just zoomed in on an image of Zwei. If you wanted to have Zwei being cute, you should have had Zwei being cute in the background, not him being in the foreground where the focus is behind us and we as the audience can't see it.
We should have had Zwei being a tumbleweed.
This is true. Just rolling around in the background. That would have been great.
Yeah.
I know this may not be something, you or, HC, you might, or Rush might be as interested in or care about, but it's definitely something I think is worth talking about since it's very important.
Oh, no, it's worth talking about. I just don't have much to say on
That's
it.
fair.
It's worth talking about. It's just useless.
Fair, it is.
No, well, that's the least nice way of putting it, but...
Anything to add on 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, though?
No, just that it does feel it's starting building up towards the end.
Mm-hmm. Rush?
Excuse me. But so we
unprofessional yawning in the podcast.
I know. I woke up at 9. I like, I'm too tired. Set my alarm for later. Woke up at 9:30. Okay, still too tired. Set.
Okay, we don't need to you out entire morning routine. You yawned. It's fine. Ignore Wolf. Let's move on.
Right.
See, now who's being mean? HC won't even let you get your life story out. He's just like, I don't need your life story, Rush. We don't care.
Hey, wow. HC, your mic's acting up. You should totally be muted again. Anyway,
and just to clarify,
where were we?
I was meant to criticize Wolf. That's all. So episode 10, Kuruyori.
Anything to Rush had something to say.
I don't think it's worth my time anymore. No. I'm gonna be petty as fuck, guys. All right. It would be a shame if this episode just disappeared.
I would cry.
Yeah.
I would cry.
Oh, crap! I don't want to make you cry. You're the only one who keeps up with me against HC. Anyway.
Here's just to let you guys know, because this episode matters to Wolf, I won't do anything to it. But if we will do something I like, if I'll try and get these two into, I don't know, into Sonic, for example, Rush would delete the episode.
I just would never
hit
record. I would just make it seem like a
exactly. Yeah, you see.
Yeah.
HC, RWBY is actually good.
Oh shit! That's all this for.
Well,
that's all for this week of the Outcast, boys.
Both fans seem to kind of hit this thing that after 3 everything's going terribly. So
Yep. After
I'll
season 3,
say that we're on even ground.
Here's the other thing, HC. The RWBY fandom is really dumb sometimes. They don't know what they want or like.
Okay. You want to know something, and it's not a compliment to Sonic or anything. If anything, it's a criticism. The Sonic fan base is probably dumber. I'm willing to bet.
Oh, sure.
Someone criticized their icon.
So, are there any other fandoms we would like
to
insult before we move on?
I mean,
moving on.
We can insult How to Train Your Dragon. Let's insult the How to Train Your Dragon fandom. We do a podcast for them.
We'll do that in a Berkcast.
Okay, yeah, sure, that makes more sense. In the Berkcast. That way they can hear and know that we're talking bad about them.
Episode 10.
Well, hold on. Now that I'm actually being serious, on the end of episode 9.
For the love of.
No. I was gonna say something about episode 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I like. Is it Ilya? Is that her
Yes,
name? Yeah,
Ilya.
I like the fact she's the chameleon faunus. That's actually
Yes.
really interesting.
I love the colors. Like it looks great in the
hmm
animation.
And then uh, we get the setup for basically what is my it's I say favorite episodes. I mean, it's one long episode for me. Um,
Hmm.
Although it's technically 11 and 12 are the main parts, but we get the back flashback in episode 10, Kuro Yuri. So basically, what
Nice
happens
segue.
is, thank you, I made it myself. Um, Basically, we get a flashback to the city of Kuro Yuri, which is where Ren and Nora were actually living. This kind of explains why in the previous episode, Ren and Nora, well, Ren more than Nora refused to go to Kuro Yuri. Um, we get a flashback of a Grim that we don't get to see the full thing. We only see dragging arms and horse legs. Of course,
Hmm.
if you are familiar with Scottish mythology, as after I looked this up after, uh,
Yep.
a Nuckelavee is basically you know what it looks like, or you at least have an idea what it looks like. So it wasn't much surprise if you did know, but if you did know, next episode you're gonna be surprised. Um, Basically, we get to see where, so we know sort of where like Weiss, we how about this? Not where they necessarily come from, but we know a lot about their background. But since Ren and Nora are such an integral part of this volume, it's we finally get to see where they come from and where their dynamic started. Because like up to this point, Nora's just fanboying over Ren, right?
Hmm.
But we get to see why, and
Yeah,
in
yeah. Like I think
quite a
it's
fun
great to
fashion.
see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I will say before, Ren and Nora were always kind of like, they weren't terrible, but they were kind of there. I didn't hate them, but I didn't necessarily like them as well. This episode really gave them a lot of depth. I liked seeing where they come from. I liked seeing their backstory and how they met and how they stuck together ever since what happens. So I like that.
It was nice to
Really
see
good episodes
Hanzo,
for this too.
had a family at one point
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
because that's literally like I'm not joking. That's literally the reference for Ren's father is
I,
just Hanzo.
I know. I just never made the connection. Oh
Like
man.
that's immediately what came to mind when I saw him.
But the second you said that, yes, yes.
Actually, did Volume 4 come out after Overwatch? I don't remember.
It should have been 2016, April 1st, 2016.
Yeah, what is that when Overwatch came out?
No, that's when the episode came or this season came out. That's when it
No,
started.
this
But
episode came out. This episode came out on January
I
25th,
have
2017.
I haven't played Overwatch, so no comment.
it was May 24th,
Fair.
2016.
Yes. So yeah, I think this was definitely after Overwatch. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not off in that then. Great. I didn't say something dumb. But yeah, I love seeing like Ren and Nora's backstory here. It's great. And I think they interspersed it through like Ruby and John traveling through Kuro Yuri and getting to see like the destroyed parts of Kuro Yuri. I think they did that really well. Like the how they interspersed the flashbacks a little bit and how, you come back to current time and you see Ren and Nora find that cave filled with weapons and, like, there was a battle there and people were killed and everything. And you kind of see them like, okay, we know what's coming now. We know exactly what's coming because we hear the scream from the Knuckle-V. Like, and they do a great job of building the Knuckle-V up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think this is where I have to once again bring up the music in this show, right? And I think like the composers behind the show, not just Casey Williams and Jeff Williams, but also the other composers who work on the show for other different types of music. They're really good at just bringing up trying to evoke specific feelings for different stuff, right? You can feel the dread and the kind of once again that creepiness factor of like, what is this thing? What does it look like and how it's building it up to these characters at the very least.
Right.
Just really well done stuff there. I guess we should mention real quick Ren's semblance.
Mm-hmm.
What
Suppression
did
of
you think of that?
emotions.
Yes. Although that's not exactly quite clear in the show, but it's kind of hard. Like, how would you know, like, I think they do a good job of trying to get that across, right? Because it's like something of how would you get that across, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean,
I'm saying
like
right a lot. I need to stop that.
I feel like they had it planned for the character for so long, based on how
Mhm.
they made him such not necessarily unfeeling, but very calm and in control of his emotions.
Yeah. Like he's
So,
very guarded.
Mm-hmm. And so making a semblance like that, I mean, yeah, obviously maybe it's also something kind of like Crow's, where it happens to him, but he can't control it to him, but he can control it to other people. So, but
I think Ren is more in control of his semblance
yeah, absolutely.
than Crow is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like it's definitely like for Crow as well. I think they've done good jobs at like, hey, there's these new semblances that aren't necessarily what you would expect from a semblance, and
Yeah.
I think they've done a good job showing that, right? Like everything up to this point's been kind of superpowerish. Like Ruby's very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I know they kind of like Crow makes the joke like some people can disappear into rose petals, but like her semblance is it whatever it is specifically, it boils down to currently at least something to do with speed, right?
Yeah.
So it's very much
And then
and then you see Yang kind of as a power boost, and Blake has shadow clones, right? Like it's very much very visible stuff that's kind of superpowerish. It's interesting to see people who are very different in that regard.
and I think the show does a great job of it. Like, so for Crows, you know, if they didn't explain, like if Crow didn't outright explain that one, that would have been, I think, a really cool thing for the show for people to find out what it is,
Yeah.
because they did a really good job of doing that. Like,
Yeah, I think it would have been great if they like held that back for longer
Mhm.
and just kind of showed you more bad things happening here and there.
and then like, or
That'd have been
maybe, and I mean, they wouldn't have outright said it, but like it could have been like Raven saying, the longer you stay around, the worse your bad luck is gonna be. Like more hints at that stuff,
Mhm.
because it makes sense that in a world of superpowers and semblances and such like that, that people wouldn't have them be 100% visible. Like,
Mhm.
I wonder how long it took for Crow to figure out his semblance was bad luck.
Like, man, Raven keeps tripping an awful lot over everything when I'm fighting her. What's up with that? But she's
Man,
always so good when I'm not around.
my sister left me. Oof, that must be a coincidence.
well, when you put it like that.
Yeah, no,
it's
it's
definitely
like,
it's definitely fun to see.
My semblance again.
Hmm.
My semblance is tingling.
Oh man.
If only he could take control of his semblance.
Right. He can amplify it, from what I understand.
Okay, before we
That was my awful attempt at a segue into episode 11.
Right.
But go ahead, HC.
no, I just want to say, I think we should move on before we continue with these jokes.
Okay then.
Quote unquote.
Episode 11, taking control.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Finally get to see one of the creepiest sticky hands in the world. Nothing?
Uh-huh.
Right? Okay. I wasted that joke for nothing.
Yeah. Over my head.
Probably.
God, I'm gonna have to link that picture.
What do you have for us? On the Berkcast, by the way, we're waiting for an image to be linked so we can get a joke. While we're waiting, I guess it's in reference to Tyrion, I assume.
No. It's in
Really?
reference to the Knuckle of
Oh,
you know
you're
something,
talking
I can
about, okay.
see it.
It's literally
Yeah,
I
called
see
a
what you're
sticky
saying
hand
now.
toy.
The sticky hand thing. I can't believe I didn't get that. I see what you're saying now.
I
That
forgot.
stupid toy that you get out of those stupid little coin machines.
Yes.
Yeah.
So okay, for those who haven't watched RWBY, first off, do, and are listening to us, which I don't know why you would be. The Knuckle of E is a combined human-like riding a horse, except for the human is fused to the top of the horse without legs. So it's riding the horse, and it has very, very long arms that drag, and it can throw these arms that stretch really far, like the sticky hand toy, which is why I made that stupid joke that I really want to delete this episode for. But
You tried.
That's dumb.
It's absolutely terrifying.
But it's a
very good job of doing it.
Norse mythology, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Scottish.
It's where it gets its origins from. Scottish. Okay. It's definitely it's a Scottish demon, is what it is. But it's like I think they did the design for it really well.
Yes.
And getting to see that and getting to see like the fight with it is just great. I think it's one of the first Grimms where we see like our characters kind of struggling with a little bit. Like, okay, this is, this is hard for them. This is taking its toll on them. Yeah, and they do it really well. And again, it comes back to that thing earlier where they consistently. I love the Grimm designs, like the designs for the Grimm. Like they have some really neat and interesting designs for the Grimm, and I love the fact that a lot of the designs for the Grimm are based on things from mythology. Kind of referencing that Grimm, that idea of Grimm tale of the Grimm fairy tales and stuff like that. I love that, but it's always been that the Grimm are kind of backseat. Like they're not. Like they keep saying like they pose this major threat to all of humanity, but they never feel like they do. And it's nice to see that a Grimm actually, that a lone singular Grimm gave our main cast, who've very much defeated a lot of Grimm by the hundreds at this point, actively had trouble with this Grimm, and it almost beat them. Right, like it actively, like it almost got them. It's nice to see that. And it's nice to see, like, you can feel the emotional, like, I think they did fairly well with the emotional weight of this fight for Ren, especially, because you can see, like, this fight definitely wears down on him more than anyone else. Like, it definitely gets to him.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that.
Well, and we saw exactly why the more, fulfilling.
And I think this was really good. I think, you get to see more of Tyrion being his crazy self, hamming it up, which is great.
Always great.
Like, yeah, I think Tyrion's definitely one of my favorite villains so far, in the fact that he's just so hammy, and it's just great. And I love the fact that they have him there, and I can't wait to see more of him. But you can definitely see, like, he's definitely insane, and he definitely is very loyal to Salem.
When he just freaking goes off on that Grimm.
Yeah, that poor Grimm. It's like, hey, bad emotions, I can eat you. Yeah, no, you picked a poor mistake, buddy. You paid for that one. Yeah. It's nice to we have I do love how Ironwood actually has one of his badass moments ruined. Like he actively, like he's fighting and arguing with Jacques, Weiss's father, and he's like, I'm gonna have my really cool entrance after I said something. I'm gonna have my really cool exit after I said something, kind of meaningful and cool, and oh, the door's locked.
Yeah.
This is awkward. Little awkward. That was great.
Well,
I would have given this season. This would have been the best season of any show I ever saw if he just pulled out his gun and shot the door down.
Yes. Or if he just like took his, robotic, like that robotic arm that he has, and just went, all right, door. I just punched a hole through it.
Yeah, because he was just shoulder checking it pretty much. Sauce.
That would have been great to see if he would have just outright bodied that door. Like, I'll pay for that later. It just walks off.
He's like, great. No, even a better exit. I'm not paying for that. You have enough money.
Yeah. That would have been great. I agree. That would have sold it that much more. I agree. We haven't mentioned him actually, but Klein, Weiss's butler, is a really fun character. I enjoy him. It's like they did something. He hams it up a little bit too, and it's nice to see like him hamming it up as well. Bleh, words.
Yeah, but butler characters fine whenever people do them.
Yeah, but like he's a nice little small side character that we get to see a little bit of, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of him. Like him interacting with some of our other cast too. Other important things, like definitely, Blake and Sun, and hearing like, Sun confront Blake on running away.
And Blake also deciding to, and Blake also decides to Fang.
Like she decides to like hang around and stick around, and like she's going to fight the White Fang now, because I think like you can see like the character progression there. Like she sees, I can't run away from this. It's going to continue to follow me and haunt me. I need to.
So I might as well prove it rather than know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Like some really good character moments there, and like seeing Tai Yang and Yang specifically talking with one another, and her dad asking her, like, well, who are you going after? You going after your mom or Ruby? And I love how the show kind of keeps that vague, all
Yeah.
the way to the end. Like you still don't quite know like who's more like what's more important to Yang, like knowing her past or looking after her little sister. I love how the show leaves it up to you, like, what do you think Yang would pick? Like that's really nice. I think the show did really well with
And
that.
I guess this find out the answer to in the next season.
You will.
Okay, fair enough.
But
So
She finds neither, and she wanders endlessly.
I guess going. I guess we should talk about this episode and episode 12 kind of all in the same, because we kind of have been already, because they are very much roll right in one or the other. So
fair
like,
enough. So.
the Knuckle of E fight, like we finally get to see Jean's upgrades.
Yep.
What did you think about that? Very kind of basic, but I think it works. Like it's actually
basic, but it gets the job done. It's not the upgrade; it's more about Jean himself, developing
Absolutely.
rather than what he's using.
Absolutely, and it's also like we didn't actually bring this up, but we should mention it. Like Jean's new armor and his new sword and his new shield and all of that. Like all of that was like the metal, like the golded, outlining and all of that stuff was done from the armor from Pyrrha's old armor, right? Like it's like you even see him wearing her old sash, like around his belt, around his belt and all that stuff. Like he's wearing like a lot of her old stuff, and he's incorporated that into his stuff now. Like it's just nice nods like that are really good to see.
Right.
But the Knuckle of E fight itself is where you really get a lot of that in episode 12 too. And again, like it's just great to see this Grim in action. I think they did really good with the animation, and all of the animation for this fight really, I think, is really enjoyable to watch.
Mm-hmm. I've already
Any
gushed
thoughts?
enough about the Knuckle of E.
No, to be honest, I think you guys pretty much sum it up all great.
I guess.
But I will.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, getting to the end of episode 12, we see everyone's headed off to their different directions now. Like, everyone's kind of got, like, they have their goals in mind now. You see, like, team, Ruby, Ren, Nora, and Jean, like, they all make it to Mistral with Crow, and he gets help and everything. And we see, a kind of an overall image of Mistral, kind of a wide shot. It looks really nice, in my opinion, and looks really interesting to see. And I'll be, interested to see more of that city. We see kind of Weiss finally headed off to apparently Mistral as well. So, we get the fact that those characters might meet up. Yang's headed off to somewhere, either to find her mother or to find Ruby. Yeah. So we're definitely going to see. We're given kind of a hint, like, she's definitely after someone, but we'll see who that is. It's definitely nice. Like she's headed off.
She's after A, B, and B, or neither.
And we see Blake holding up the old symbol of the White Fang, and how she's now wanting to reestablish the White Fang as a as the peaceful organization that it was, right? Like she has her goal in mind now. She wants to fight now. Yes. And then we go to our villains, and apparently good old Professor Lionheart may not be quite who you think he is.
He's not Richard the Lionheart. He's the Cowardly Lion.
But it's, like he's apparently working with one of our villains, possibly. Although, I guess, considering Cinder and her friends supposedly came from Haven Academy, that was definitely a thought that might have been in the back of people's minds already. And they definitely confirm it with this little scene. But that's not all. But go ahead.
I was about to bring up the post-credit scene.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
Okay, so we see Oscar, meeting Crow and telling him that he's husband, and Crow returns his cane. What does that mean? I have no freaking clue, because I need to watch the next season.
I think
you'll find out soon enough. Imagine though having to wait for a year based off of that reveal. Imagine.
Yeah, I can only imagine the pain. Well, If this is pretty much it, I'm sorry for being so unprofessional, but I'm being pressured here to finish early. But I didn't want to leave you guys in the middle of the season recap. So if we're done, I'll have to
Oh,
go away
just
quickly.
do
But
we have any final thoughts? I can end really quick if that's the case. Any final thoughts for anybody?
I'll just say this is my favorite season so far. I really enjoyed its direction. I really enjoyed its character moments, the animation. Some of the fight scenes were a bit wonky, like you guys said, but overall, I had fun.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Anything to add, Rush?
Nope. I enjoyed the season. I liked the change of pace and the change of scenery, despite everybody else's misgivings apparently. But yeah, it was enjoyable. Maybe it's because we get to watch it all in one go. Sorry,
Yeah,
probably.
It definitely helps. I think it definitely helps. I think it definitely helps a lot. But yeah, I would agree. Like this is definitely one of my more favorite volumes of RWBY. It's not my favorite volume of RWBY. You'll find out soon enough what that might be. But I definitely enjoyed this one a lot. But if that's everything, this has been the Outcast RWBYathon with RWBY Volume 4. I've been your host, Wolf.
I was HC.
And I was Rush.
And if you want to get in touch with us and tell us your thoughts about RWBY Volume 4 or what we've talked about here, you can do so in the comments below. You can find us on Tumblr at berkcastteam.tumblr.com. You can also, if you just want to know exactly when it is we upload, you can follow our Twitter at Berkcast, capital B, capital C. And with all of that said, we'll see you next time for Volume 5.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.